Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to it. It's the Blitz. It's already week 3. It's amazing how fast this goes, man. I hate it. I hate how fast the football season goes, especially when you start stacking injuries. But you know what else goes fast? This intro. We'll see you in 30. Good morning, everybody. It's that time again. It's week 3. Goodness sakes, like I said, we're already dealing with so many damn injuries that, like the DFS show last night, I wish I'd have been there. I apologize for missing that last night. I had some obligations with the child that luckily I'm not having to face right now. But yeah, no, it's been crazy. There's so many value picks in DFS right now. It's insane. Let's get this thing done, though. That means that we've also got probably guys available on waivers to help you guys out if we're in a hole right now, and if we're looking at adding anything. But to start things off, on my left, we got my man Jeff. Jeff, how are we doing this morning?
Doing well, Mikey. Sunday morning, always the best morning of the week to be with you two gentlemen. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I'm definitely more of a morning person than an evening guy. I get pretty tired about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which I think means I'm old. Speaking of old, happy belated birthday to this man down here, although he's still younger than I am. Down below, my man Joe. Joe, how are we doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Looking at the TV to my side here, there's some pretty legit injury updates coming in, but I don't know. I feel like I woke up this morning most excited for this week out of the first few. Week 1 is like half anxiousness, half excitement. Last week, I was out, concert day. This week, I'm settled in, geared up, ready to rock. Lots going on, lots to keep track of, and ready to rock it out for an hour with you guys.
Let's do it. So speaking of injuries, we'll just go ahead and lead right off with that. Joe, why don't you go ahead and give us your injury report? I'm gonna fix
right now there's 2 that have kind of taken the league for the day as far as importance, both at the quarterback position. ESPN giving an update right now on Justin Herbert. It feels like he is going to try and play, quote unquote. I don't know. They're being vague and weird about the way they're saying it. Sounds like they're going to play. Also sounds like they're gearing up for another day where between Edwards and Dobbins, you're looking at 30 to 40 carries there for the Chargers, especially with that matchup against Pittsburgh. Jordan Love also still has recovered very quickly from the injury that he has. He is being considered a game time decision. It sounds like Willis is going to get one more start, but they're not committing. So I think Willis is going to get the start, but they haven't committed to that yet.
Malik Willis is my only starting quarterback in the Scott Fish Bowl right now, and that's exactly how I planned it when I drafted in July, just so you know.
And literally, and this update just came in a few minutes ago, too, because the last one I had read, it was more of like iffy, but now it does sound like Willis is going to play, and but Love will be back next week, so that's good news for the Packers. Looking at running back real quick, not too much that we don't already know. We know Joe Mixon's out this week. Kenneth Walker's out again this week. Mostert's out again this week. That's about all that's going on there. Wide receiver, Justin Jefferson will play. That's a big get for Minnesota. We know that the Rams are out both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. That's awesome.
We'll just start calling him Koopa Nakua when it's both of them.
That is great. Debo's out for the 49ers today. We know that. George Kittle's also out for the 49ers today. Keenan Allen's out. Michael Pittman looks like he will play for the Colts. And I will leave it at that, my friends.
Is there any 49ers playing today?
Jordan Mason's all of a sudden
he's going to be the man out there, as well as Juwan Jennings. I know you talked about him last night on your DFS lineup. That's a guy I'm really high on this week as well. I really like Juwan Jennings in a lot of different situations that they're going to be coming up against. Ayuk takes a pretty good tick up there too as well. So
Yep, I agree with that. And they love Jennings in the red zone too, I believe.
Oh, nice. Yeah, same. Jennings in the red zone. Ayuk in the red zone today, too. I think Ayuk's going to be one of those value plays at 6,300 on FanDuel, as well as if he's on your bench. I feel like this is going to be the week to get him rostered out there. Make sure you're in there asking your questions, guys. Get them out there. I've got the first question here. We got wide receiver. We got McLaurin or Demarcus Robinson or Shaheed. And we'll go ahead and let you lead this one off, Jeff.
I mean, these are interesting choices. So right off the bat, I would say I'm going to rule out McLaurin, not because he's not talented, but because it seems like Jaden Daniels hasn't necessarily figured out the passing game there in Washington. He had a couple rushing touchdowns, which is nice week one, but didn't do necessarily very well. So when you're looking at Demarcus Robinson, Rashid Shaheed, I'm slightly leaning towards Demarcus Robinson just because Rashid Shaheed has done well. He's got touchdowns in each of the first two games, but I think he's only had 7 receptions overall. So it's kind of like a home run ball, almost like we always use the Deshaun Jackson comparison, kind of feast or famine. So it seems like Shaheed has done well, but only he's gotten the most out of what has been passed his way. So because of the injuries for the Rams and Demarcus Robinson kind of slipping into the number 1 wide receiver spot, I'm going Demarcus Robinson. That was very long-winded.
What do you say right here, Joe?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. It's hard to not want to play Robinson given their injury situation. They got to throw it to somebody. You know, you got a good quarterback there. It's hard to argue the fact that Shaheed's gotten that touchdown and 60, 70, 80 yards both weeks so far. So I guess you got to rule out McLaurin, even though at some point I do think he's there. Once Daniels just goes up one more notch in his passing game, I believe McLaurin's going to start being relevant again. But I guess you got to go Robinson or Shaheed. And I guess my mind goes to the safer pick, which feels like Shaheed because he's done it 2 weeks in a row. But
you know, and I kind of agree with that too. I wish that the answer here was McLaurin with as high as I am on Jaden Daniels. But the only way that guy seemed to get anything done is with his legs so far. I'm with you. He needs to take another step with his arm. Kind of like Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson started off really slow with his arm. But he was running the ball quite frequently, and that's like kind of his forte. Jaden Daniels as well. So I feel like he's the answer right here. I feel like Demarcus Robinson, a guy that's on my daily fantasy lineup today is Tutu Atwell, because we've seen what Demarcus Robinson can do as a one several times, right? And it has not ever been anything that we're like, hey, you know what? This guy's fantastic. Let's go ahead and get Demarcus Robinson on my squad. He does have games where he gets touchdowns. I don't think that this is going to be any different. He could probably get 3 for 4 for about 45 yards and a touchdown, but I feel like the targets are going to go elsewhere, and I feel like that's going to be Tutu Atwell. I feel like he's kind of the go-to guy after that first tier. So go ahead.
You know what's crazy about Atwell real quick? Because I agree with you, Mikey, and I was looking at him this week, looking at my DFS lineups. When I looked at the Ram depth chart, and I don't get this because Atwell was valuable last year, they still have him listed 4th. So with the injuries the way they are. So they've got Robinson, and then they got 2 young kids. They got Witt something, and I don't even. But Atwell's still 4th now, which shocked me because he's proved last year to be very, very valuable to them. I was shocked that he's not on the field for more snaps with both Nakua and Kupp out, and Higbee out too, for that matter.
Yeah, nope. Yeah, like I said, I feel like he's going to be the guy that they slot in there. Yeah, I know they got the 2 rookies out there as well. But again, I feel like that's going to be short-lived on short plays. It might look like that on a depth chart. I don't think that's how it's going to look on the field. Go ahead and get to our man, Trans-Siberian. What is happening? Hi, guys. He says, my wife appreciated that you started after we finished supper. That's literally all we were waiting for.
That's the greatest thing ever.
It's for you guys to go ahead and finish supper. Our flex dilemma, half PPR. JSN against Miami, Moss against Washington. To accompany Brian Robinson, Etienne, Collins, and Rice. Joe, we'll go ahead and let you lead this one off.
All right, my man. Moss, yeah. I love how he asks these questions. He gives you everything you need to know. So I think that at this point, after last week, I'm going to have a hard time not playing Smith and Jigba for Seattle. He had a great week last week. I think he's finally getting more relevant targets than Tyler Lockett, even though Lockett certainly still is relevant. I don't know. I know Moss has probably got a better shot of getting in the end zone. Jeff's going to say the tie goes to the running back, and he's probably going to go Moss for that reason. But I don't know. I'm not seeing the same Moss magic that I saw from him in Indianapolis last year. So you could probably sway me, but my gut is telling me Smith and Jigba. Well,
you are absolutely right with your gut feeling on which direction I'm leaning there, Joe. So Ty goes to the running back, or at least leans that way. Moss has not been all that great, and we always, or at least I tend to bring up, try not to get into that pitfall of judging a player based on the previous week alone, which, yes, Smith and Jigba had a great week last week. I just don't know if he can necessarily carry it over and be consistent. So, I mean, Moss is going to get, I think he had maybe 13, 14 touches last week. He's going to be somewhere in that vicinity of 10 to 15 touches, which is going to be more than Smith and Jigba. And you're right. I think he just has more opportunity in the red zone than Smith and Jigba. So I'd go Moss.
And I see I wasn't able to catch both your guys' answer. I feel like JSN's been getting involved enough on this offense. I feel like this is going to be a game, though, that they're not going to have to do a whole awful lot. I think Skylar Thompson, I'm starting the Seattle defense because Skylar Thompson's fairly ineffective as a quarterback. I don't expect huge fireworks coming out of Miami today. Although, Skylar Thompson's also a kid that can air that ball out. And he's got Tyreek Hill, he's got Waddle. I mean, that's going to be two guys that.
And no Kenneth Walker for Seattle either.
Right, and no Kenneth Walker for Seattle. So, I mean, that's going to be another uptick for him. But I'm still going to lean Moss. I think that they'll be able to run the ball against them and at least be able to get a touchdown. Because I remember he's always, it's half PPR, which is basically standard, right? So, give me Moss over JSN. Sure. Right there. Let's get to the next question here. If I can even find the dang thing. I'm telling you what, it's a Monday for a Sunday. We got Flex Ford or Montgomery. And Jeff, I'll go ahead and let you lead this one off.
Man, this is an interesting one and kind of a tough one to pick. So Ford, I mean, I haven't necessarily looked at him too much. He's the obvious with Chubb out. He's still, the number one back over there. Montgomery, it's so, I mean, they're in Arizona. It's the highest over under the week, but it's weird with that dual running back dynamic. Montgomery has seemingly gotten more touches inside the red zone than Jahmyr Gibbs. But because you still have that dual threat and you have the other weapons on Detroit, I think we even brought him up last night for a little while, that there's so many guys you can't really go Goff because he just doesn't have the running ability. You can maybe go St. Brown because Goff leans that way. Laporta, Gibbs, Montgomery. There's just Jameson Williams has done well. So just because Ford is just really the only guy in the backfield for Cleveland, and they're playing the Giants this week, I would say Ford.
That Giants defense to me isn't really a slouch. That is if they do have a shining quality out of the Giants, it is that defense. I thought I was talking trash on Deshaun Watson last weekend. I said that it didn't look slow. It looked underdeveloped. Last week, they looked a lot better. He looked like he was making a lot better decisions out of the pocket. Looked like he was firing the ball with some actually decent accuracy out there. That said, I feel like Montgomery's your touchdown guy right here. I feel like Montgomery's going to be the guy that leans over the top and actually gets you the touches. But I think Ford's going to probably be a guy that gets you probably 12 for, call it 67 today, with I would say less than a 5% chance of a touchdown versus Montgomery, who's only going to be able to give you about a 15% chance with Jahmyr Gibbs out there still. So what do you think here, Joe?
This is really tough because I feel with Montgomery, I can close my eyes and say 11 carries, 51 yards, and a touchdown 1 reception, 9 yards. There's your 13 points. Ford, you look at his stat line, the week 1, 12 for 44 and a touchdown and another six catches. Now, last week, he went 7 for 64 and only 1 catch. So less production in week 2. Deonta Foreman actually got a lot of carries last week. And I'll be honest, I saw one of them and he fumbled at the goal line. So I'm not sure they're going to make that mistake again. So I do feel like Ford has the higher ceiling. This is a coin flip for me, though. I have this predicament in one of my leagues. This is a really tough one. I think I probably go Ford just because I hate the idea that Montgomery has a ceiling because of Gibbs.
Yeah, no, that's a good take too. Like I said, I don't mind Ford here. I just don't feel like he's going to get in the end zone as quick as Montgomery will. And yeah, we're going to have a special guest who's pretty.
There we go. Somebody new on the show.
There you go. Yep. And if you really want good advice, you're going to get some from this little one right here because she'll yell at you if you know it's the wrong one right here. Let's see here. We got Jacoby Myers or Tyler Johnson. And I'll go ahead and let you lead this one off here, Joe.
Tyler Johnson, we're talking about just to level set.
He's a starter on the Rams.
I just wanted to make sure that's who we were talking about. I believe there's a second Tyler Johnson. Didn't the Bills have a running back, Tyler Johnson?
They did, yes. Ty Johnson, yep.
All right.
I think it was the Jets, yeah.
All right. Just to make sure I'm not crazy there. I don't want people to think I don't know Tyler. But I don't know. This is one of the guys that I'm talking about is ahead of Atwell on the depth chart behind Robinson. Even with the 49er injuries, you'd think the Rams are going to have to throw a lot today to score some points. I could see Tyler Johnson getting some trash. Myers, I don't know. It's funny because Bowers has had a couple of big games. Adams had a really big game last week. Myers has kind of been lost in that so far. Whereas last year, by the end of the year, Myers was almost having more consistent games than Adams. So it's kind of funny. I think by the end of the year, we're probably going Myers, but I think week 3 right now, you might be better off with Johnson.
Yeah, with the situation happening the way it is right now in Los Angeles, I think Tyler Johnson's actually not a bad grab right now. I think, but she disagrees. She's leaning more Jacoby Myers, I think. No, I think Tyler Johnson for the volume here. What do you say, Jeff?
Yeah, it's funny. Jacoby Myers is up there with Tyler Boyd. I just don't like him. He can either get you 1 catch for 19 yards or 6 for 130 and a touchdown. I can't stand the guy from a fantasy standpoint because of that, because we've seen so much up and down with him. Tyler Johnson, I don't know what to expect out of Tyler Johnson, but Joe just brought up the depth chart. I think Johnson is probably ahead of Tutu Atwell on the depth chart. I think it might be DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson. So because of that, I would say Tyler Johnson because Jacoby Myers just really annoys the hell out of me, man.
Fair enough.
And
like I said, I want Jacoby Myers to be good. I want Jacoby Myers to be back, but I just don't think we're going to see that with Gardner Minshew. I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon with him or anything like that. So that actually catches us up on questions. So I know, Joe, you said you had some stuff to add here.
You did them.
Oh, those were actually all the questions right there that you had going on. So let's go ahead and talk about matchups. What kind of matchups are we looking at today that have got you guys excited? Like which ones? Like Denver, Tampa Bay. I think I'm liking that one a little bit just because I feel like Tampa Bay is going to be able to do some damage there. Denver still looks like garbage to me. I feel like there's a lot of fantasy plays in that game. I know that's not to go DFS, but that's I stacked up with Baker Mayfield and Rachaad White this time. What are your thoughts on that? Do you like Rachaad White?
Yeah, we got some stuff to talk about, Mikey. Go do what you got to do with the baby over there. What are you thinking on that game, Mish?
So Jesus and Joey, why don't you brought up an article that was written, I think the other day about Bo Nix and the Steelers defense versus Bo Nix, which is fairly amusing. That really makes me think that Tampa Bay, especially at home, is going to have a pretty good day. We talked about it last night. If you want to catch people up this morning on that one.
Yeah, they were just talking about after the game that the defense on the sideline last Sunday was kind of mocking the the Denver offense in the playbook. The Steelers obviously had an idea of what Denver wanted to do, and they just could tell the playbook was so constricted based on the fact that they're trying to keep it simple right now as they're onboarding Knicks to the offense, which I guess makes sense. In fairness, when you're cycling through from like a DFS perspective last night, I'm looking at Sutton and I'm looking at they got a guy, I think something Vale. When you're looking at their wideouts, they've actually had a couple of decent games, a few of them. And Josh Reynolds, too, actually has been pretty good for them. So they've had okay games fantasy-wise. Knicks has scored like 11 to 13 both weeks. But they've also, the defensive that have played them have been pretty good. I made the switch to Tampa. Tampa, from a league perspective, they were available on waivers in a lot of leagues. And then obviously they were a nice cheap price from a DFS perspective this week.
Yeah,
and worst case scenario, maybe they don't have a pick six, but Denver's not scoring 31 points today. And I'm already fearful that we're going to kick off next week's show with a recap of me saying this now, because Bo Nix puts up 7 touchdowns now that I
right. Watch this guy go out and make us all look foolish. You know who would be appreciative of that? The number 1 Broncos fan here. But that's why I just keep saying, man, I just don't think it's ever going to happen. What are your thoughts on that match there, Jeff? What do you think on that Denver game?
Well, that one, it doesn't interest me as much as a couple others. So we brought up the article there a little bit. Denver is just simply not exciting to watch. Tampa's been interesting, and with the resurgence of Baker Mayfield, or the continuance of Baker Mayfield, because he never actually really fell off. He just got injured that one year. But one that really strikes me is that I'm very interested in seeing. We had our DFS lineups last night. And I went back through and I was looking at some of the numbers, and I put together a couple other lineups. I'm looking at Baltimore at Dallas, and I'm loving Lamar Jackson. I'm loving Derrick Henry. Reason being is first 2 games, and again, we brought this up last night. The Dallas defense last year was just known for being a great defense, especially fantasy-wise. But through the first 2 games, they've given up 283 yards rushing and 5 rushing touchdowns. So at home against Baltimore, Baltimore's got a stout rush defense, but I'm looking to have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry with a huge game at Dallas, because they seemingly cannot stop anybody on the ground.
Well, and it's a must-win. It's a must-win for Baltimore because they're 0-2. You hate to say that week 3, but it's getting to that point. Dallas is also desperate. They're coming off a bad loss. And then the other thing is, one of the narratives that came out of that Baltimore loss last week was, why isn't Derrick Henry getting the ball more? Why isn't Derrick Henry getting the ball in the fourth quarter of games where they have the lead more? So you normally, when those are the narratives coming out with star players, those wrongs are very quickly corrected.
Yeah, that's actually another guy. So I paid up a bunch this week for CeeDee Lamb, because I think CeeDee Lamb's going to go off today. I feel like that's going to be, I hate to say it, Baltimore fans, but I think Baltimore is going to start this season off 0-3. Dallas always just does so phenomenal after a big loss like that. They usually come out and get like 50 points against they just run rampant. So I'm pretty high on a lot of Dallas guys. I'm still pretty low. That is kind of weird that they're not running the ball more. But that's also, don't forget, they've got just a completely different style of offense going on this year, without the tandem of Gus Edwards and Derrick Henry, Gus Edwards and gosh dang, J.K. Dobbins. That's the guy who's actually the running back there. I don't know. It's hard to say with that team. I feel like that is a good matchup, though. Like I said, I feel like, though, I'm going to be grabbing as much Dallas players. And in Dallas players, just CeeDee Lamb, because if you're going to grab Dallas players, he's the only one you can afford. Because
I could see that being one of the highest scoring games of the week, too,
on FanDuel,
when it's all said and done.
Well, Spina, I'll throw another one at you guys, which I'm looking forward to seeing, because we Kirk Cousins has always had that stigma on him that he can't perform in prime time, and he's always fell flat in his face in prime time, which he kind of just shoved that to the side this past week. So they're home against Kansas City. This should be really interesting. Kansas City squeaked by Cincinnati. Sure, they're still probably the best team in the league, but Atlanta at home with Kirk Cousins going up against the defending Super Bowl champs, to me, I find that a very intriguing matchup that I could see Atlanta possibly pulling off. What do you guys think?
It
I give
wouldn't
them.
shock me. You know, like if I was playing the over-under on this one, if it was within about 5 points, I'd say I'd definitely take Atlanta because you know they're going to be, you know, the underdog in this case. I think Atlanta can stay pretty damn close, and I feel like if you can get to the end of the game, the Chiefs have been performing, but they just kind of the Chiefs during the regular season, they don't have to do an awful lot to win. They don't go overextend themselves. They let their defense do a lot of the work for them. They let the ground game kind of pound it down. Without Isaiah Pacheco, that might change a little bit, but they do have Kareem Hunt, Carson Steele, Samaje Perine. They got a slew of people going on there. Oh, she disagrees again right here, but no, I really think that that's going to be a good game right there. I feel like I'm grabbing quite a few players from that one as well, just because I like the opportunity of Kirk Cousins. I think that defense does allow a little bit of the longer passing game. I like Drake London a little bit. Kyle Pitts. Travis Kelce, I feel like, has a pretty good game today. That was for Kyle Pitts. If you didn't know that, don't play Kyle Pitts. That guy's been such a letdown. Like if you're going to be a letdown with Kirk Cousins, I give up on you. We're done. We're done, Kyle Pitts. What do you think of that matchup, Jeff?
I think that I was relieved to see Atlanta pull that game off against the Eagles last week, even though it lost me some bets because I wanted Atlanta to be the real deal and they didn't look good week one. So we're really going to find out this week. Nationally televised night game, which I don't believe Cousins historically is good national night games, but big win last week, which was a national night game for them too. And I think it's going to be interesting to see for the Chiefs fantasy wise, the impact of Pacheco being out. So you have Steele and Perine this week. Hunt's not going to be active this week, but you have Steele and Perine who are going to, share the running back duties. It sounds like Steele on the early downs, short yardage, and Perine in the more passing situations. It'll be interesting to see how no Pacheco impacts them in general because they were starting to struggle a little bit before Pacheco came on without a running game. They were a little too one-dimensional. And then secondly, it'll be really interesting to see, does this mean Mahomes is going to start having 300-yard games every week without Pacheco because they don't have anybody to necessarily feed 20 carries to? I would love to see Mahomes start to rise up from a fantasy perspective again. But to Mike's point, you got to be careful because the Chiefs are not going to lay it all on the line for a game in September. Fantasy-wise, whatever, and that does play into fantasy sometimes. Kelce or whatnot, I think you got to be real careful with in the regular season this year. But I'm looking forward to that game.
And I'll throw another one at you guys since I'm looking at it. I want to see who's the real deal here. So you got Houston at Minnesota. Houston has seemingly been crowned kind of certainly they've separated themselves from the AFC South. So both 2-0. Minnesota is actually the underdog in their own building. Is Sam Darnold for real, or is he kind of a pretender? I guess we'll see what happens going up against Houston. I don't know. What do you think, Mike? Do you have any take on that particular matchup?
I like Houston in this matchup right here. I feel like this is going to be kind of a Minnesota coming down to earth, but Minnesota's defense has been pretty outstanding. They've been doing a lot of things. It's the ghost defense, right? The guy who makes you chase ghosts is the coordinator over there now. They've really looked a lot better in that capacity as far as it goes. But I feel like there's just, and I know is Nico Collins, was he on that injury report today? Is he in or out?
He's playing.
So at full strength, I feel like Houston has so many weapons. We're really going to see this defense get tested today. I feel like Houston's going to just keep steamrolling over everybody until somebody figures out a way to stop the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 punch that they're able to bring to you. Without Joe Mixon, that does hurt a little bit of things there, but I feel like I don't feel like that you're really losing a whole lot with Cam Akers there.
I'm trying to decide what type of game it's going to be because Minnesota's defense has been good. Now, against the Giants doesn't mean much, but against the 49ers, that's impressive. Houston's looked good so far. They don't have Mixon, so I'm curious to see if this turns out to be more of like a 20-17 game or if these offenses turn it up and it's more of a 31-28 game. But there's a lot of fantasy plays too. And Tank Dell, I think this is a real interesting week for Dell. So you got Diggs there. Diggs has looked pretty good. Nico Collins has cemented himself really as the number one there. Dell has been phased out so far. Mixon's had a ton of touches. So I wonder with no Mixon this week, if they get back to Dell getting a bunch more touches, because obviously before his injury, he was really coming on. But that being said, I've got a bunch of quick lineup scenarios that are kind of coming in via text or whatnot.
Oh, real quick, pause it there, and we're going to go ahead and help this Krista Molinax right here. She says, what are your thoughts on the 49ers defense versus the Chicago defense? And Jeff, by default, I'm going to ask you, what do you think here? Who do you like better, Chicago or 49ers? Default, because you were just talking right there, Joe.
I guess I'm leaning. I mean, the Niners are at the Rams. Even though the Rams are missing a decent amount of pieces, I still think that they're going to put up some points. I mean, Chicago's defense is the only reason they've been in any games. They're at Indianapolis. Indianapolis doesn't exactly have, the best offense that we've seen. Anthony Richardson is kind of, people are pretty high on him, especially from a fantasy standpoint from last year. Then he got injured, I guess. But I just think Chicago's defense has stood out surprisingly a little bit more than San Francisco's to start, and they've had to, just because Caleb Williams has not done that well. So I'm leaning Chicago. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, this is tough. Chicago put up 24 points week 1 against Tennessee, 2 defensive touchdowns, and then 6 last week at Houston, but still only 19 points, which at Houston, I think that's a win given that offense. We just talked about it. San Francisco defense at the Rams, no Nakua, no Kupp, but you do still have to deal with Stafford and Kyron Williams. Man, this is hard. I think that if your defensive scoring is pretty standard, I think I'm going to take a shot with Chicago, because I think they got the better chance of scoring points on defense as they did week 1. If your point range is a little more moderate and you're still going to score some points, even if you give up like 21 or something, then I think I like the 49er one a little more.
Yeah, I do like the 49ers defense today quite a bit. But I feel like that's going to be – I feel like the Chicago defense is definitely the play right here, just because of a shorthanded Rams team. I mean, once you're out Puka, okay, you still got Kupp. Once you're out Kupp, okay, you still got Higbee. Okay, once you're out Higbee, then now you're starting to get down to that third string rookies, things like that. Now, if anybody can get these guys in line, is Stafford, but are they going to be running the right routes? Are they going to be able to get separation or things like that? And I feel like Chicago's going to be able to exploit that, take advantage of some of those gaps, take advantage of the lack of separation that they've probably been preparing for, I mean, this entire offseason. Once you get your schedule, you have weeks where you deal with each team separately. And so I'm sure that this is kind of a breath of relief for them. And I think they'll be able to get in a lot of pressure into Matt Stafford, probably be able to pull you down about 4.5 sacks today. I would say interception almost guaranteed. And that interception could easily turn into a touchdown. So for me, it's the Chicago defense.
Well, just to be clear, I think you're talking about San Francisco, because the Niners are at the Rams and Chicago is at Indy. So I think you're leaning San Francisco.
Yeah, no, that is what my thoughts are. I feel like Anthony Richardson does have an uptick. I was thinking of the 49ers. It was because I looked at Chicago right there when I was reading it towards the end. But yeah, no, I feel like that's just going to be a better matchup competitively. And again, I feel like Anthony Richardson has been hearing enough about his arm. I think we're going to get to see his arm get featured a little bit right there. So let's go ahead and crank into those scenarios there, Joe.
I got another. Yeah, this is a good one. Chuba Hubbard or DeAndre Swift today?
Jeff, lead us off right here. He's laughing because he said Chuba Hubbard. He's about ready to give you his A.J. Dillon take.
I just turned 44, but I'm not dead inside. How can't you say Chuba?
I'm sure he'd appreciate it. I'm sorry. I don't pay attention to Chuba. He's still on Carolina, right?
Yeah, and he's the starter.
Okay. I think that answers the question, because what in the world is going on in Carolina? Are they even an NFL team at this point? Because
no, but I'll tell you what, in all honesty, you don't think Andy Dalton's going to probably throw for 250 yards or 2 or 3 touchdowns today for them? I think he will. And they'll probably still lose, but I think he's going to make them fantasy relevant. It's kind of what he does, no?
Right. Well, and so the other thing is it's 2 really bad offenses. So because the Bears, there were high expectations for the Bears.
No, they're not.
No, you're talking Swift, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, I mean, so you got the Panthers, then you got the Bears. Both have been terrible on offense. I think Bears kind of because Caleb Williams, I guess you can't necessarily put it on all of them because his offensive line has not given him any sort of time whatsoever. So it's a flip of a coin. I'm saying Swift just because he's more talented than our boy Chuba. It's a love affair, Chuba. So I'll go Swift.
I agree with you on the offensive line. Swift had 14 carries for 18 yards last week, and you know that he's talented. He's just got nowhere to go, where last year he was running through everybody with Philly. But what were you going to say, Mike?
You're on mute, my man.
Mute. I hit mute. I swear to God, I did right there. No, I feel like it's Chuba Hubbard's the answer here. I just like his opportunity a little bit more. I think we're going to see a different tune come out of Carolina with Andy Dalton coming out there at quarterback. Now, here's my prediction is that he's only going to be out there for probably about 3 or 4 drives. Andy Dalton is fragile 5 years ago, right? And now it's like, now we've got him in a team that has very, very limited offensive line capabilities. I don't know. I think we see him break. I think we see Bryce come back out. And quarterback for this team, which isn't going to bode well for anything. But I feel like at least that very beginning, when they have some semblance of normalcy going on in that offense, man, I was way off. I thought they'd be taken off by now, hopefully, or maybe this benching will actually do the trick. But I don't know if too many times where I've seen a benching do the trick when we're talking about performance issues, right? I've seen it do the trick if you're like a diva and having attitude issues, but it's not like you're like, well, if you sit the bench, well, all of a sudden you're going to be able to figure out a defense. I mean, there's a whole lot of things there that I feel like Bryce was going to take a huge step forward, and he just hasn't yet this season. So, yeah, I was wrong on that one for sure. I'll own it.
No, I thought they were going to be a little better than what we've seen so far, too. I'm with you there. Here's a wide receiver one. Waddle or Smith and Jigba? Typical half-point PPR.
I'm going to say Jackson Smith for me today just because of Skylar Thompson at quarterback scares me. I didn't think that he was a very good substitute for Tua. Now he's had a week under his belt now, not like he hasn't had years with this team or anything like that, right? Like, I mean, he knows what he's doing there as far as it goes. But it's still, he doesn't just seem to have the effectiveness, the efficiency, the speed, the intelligence, just everything that Tua brings to the table. That this guy I just don't think does. So I'm leaning the opposite there. What do you think, Jeff?
I mean, it's funny because they're in the same game. It's really interesting out in Seattle. It's a tough environment. I get it. Skylar Thompson isn't necessarily the best pick, but I think that Waddle is a more talented receiver than Smith and Jigba. Geno and Smith and Jigba have a little bit more chemistry, maybe, obviously, since Thompson, this is his first start, but I just like Waddle as a better option than Smith and Jigba because I think they'll be playing from behind, so they'll have to throw.
Fair point too. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a real toss-up for me. It would be painful to go Smith and Jigba and watch Waddle break a 75-yard slant in the first quarter, which he's got the speed to do. But you got to love the volume that Smith and Jigba got last week too. Here's a super flex one that just came in.
Well, hold up. We got another question here.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Look at this. Waddle.
In a 10-team half PPR league, flex Waddle, Jay Reed, or Steele, and we'll go ahead and let you lead this one off, Jeff.
I'll tell you, that's a tough one. Well, right off the bat, I'm going to get rid of Reed. Reed, a little bit of fool's gold. He had that tremendous week one. I think he just slides back to normal what he does, especially with if we're getting confirmation that Malik Willis is playing. So I just, I don't think you see much out of Reed. And Waddle or Steele, we always just said, and I said earlier in the show, Ty goes to the running back. Steele, he'll be as the number one back. I think they got P. Ryan there too, but I think Steele has more carries and will have more opportunity. Although not that Waddle can't break what Joe just said on a slant in the first quarter and bust one for 75 yards. But I just think that the more opportunities is going to go to Steele than Waddle.
See, I feel like Reed would be a great play because Malik Willis is amazing. I'll have you know. I might just be willing this because he is my only Scott Fish Bowl quarterback. I can't quit stressing this. I'm freaking out. I hate it. I'm sad. No, for me, it's actually Waddle here. I feel like Waddle is going to be the guy who's probably going to be the most productive out of these three guys. It's crazy that this is the kind of lineup we're looking at a 10 team, man. Like usually you have a little bit more clout or better options there. Maybe something out there on the waiver wire, but I don't think you're going to have anything better than this, I guess. But for me, it's Waddle, but I'm not very excited about having Waddle going in here either. Carson Steele, I feel like gets a little bit of a volume load, but Samaje Perine to me is the play this week. And again, Malik Willis, that's just me trying to will the universe into being Jordan Love. Or being in my Scott Fishbowl. So I feel like he's probably a bad play since I'm telling you that.
I'll defend this guy though, because if Waddle's your flex in a 10 team, that you don't know that Waddle's not going to have Tua 4 weeks in. Waddle's a good flex with Tua, and Waddle's the play here with Tua. But without him, and you can't go read, in my opinion, without Love there. I don't know. I'm fine with going Waddle. I think maybe because Tyreek Hill's there, maybe I try Steele this week, understanding he'll probably get double-digit touches, double-digit carries, and is probably now the best shot to get a rushing touchdown in, for KC in that game against Atlanta. I think I'd give Steele one shot here this week. I'd have a short leash on him. I don't think I'd give him another one if he's not good this week, but I think I'd look for Steele to steal you 15 versus if you start Waddle, and I'm not overly against it, but I feel like you're kind of like crossing your fingers and just kind of hoping that he catches lightning in the bottle once, because we're not sure how consistent Skylar Thompson's going to be today.
Yeah, he just hasn't seemed very efficient with the carries that he's gotten so far that I've seen. I was counting on a lot more out of the guy, but I actually kind of swayed with you. I feel like I'm more on Steele now here. So,
all right,
a 2-1 Steele. I do, like I said, I feel like Waddle will at least get you about 10 points, but I feel like you're right. Ty's going to definitely go to the runner here. Go ahead and crank out that next scenario, my man.
A super flex, Mr. Minshew or the rookie Caleb Williams?
Ooh. Well, I'll get into that one for you, Joe. You got to go Minshew Mania, Minshew Magic, whatever you want to call it, just because until we see Caleb Williams actually have some time or have a decent game, especially with Keenan Allen out, I think you got to go Minshew at home versus Carolina, who's frankly pathetic, and their offense probably won't be on the field very much. So I'm going to assume that Minshew will have more opportunities to put up some passing yards than Caleb Williams, because Williams just simply hasn't had time, and nor has he been all that great since he's been in there.
I feel like Deontay Johnson is going to have a pretty good game. I feel like Andy Dalton changes a lot of things for that offense.
I agree with you. I really do. It's not going to translate into wins, but I agree with Mikey. I think Johnson and or Thielen have a relevant fantasy game today. Sorry to interrupt you, but I agree with you.
Yeah, no, that's all I'm just thinking of, because Carolina, to me, can be a team that should be good. They've got a great defense. They've got a lot of key pieces that I like on that team. Deontay Johnson being one of them. I know that, Jeff, you have your own take on Deontay Johnson, the A.J. Dillon take, as I like to call it. I feel like he's really good at that kind of stuff, man. I feel like he's good. And you're welcome, Kevin. We got your back, Jack. Make sure you're here every week, man. We're here every week, ready to help you out, ready to get these things down. What else you got there, Joe?
Well, hold on, Joe, real quick, just because we're talking about Deontay Johnson. So if you kind of have some faith in him there, maybe a last-minute DFS lineup, because you got Deontay Johnson as quite the value play at 5,300 on FanDuel. So if you think that he's going to get you maybe the 75 yards and a TD, that's a really good value play to allow you to slip in maybe like a Barkley into your lineup or something like that. So just FYI on that if you want to get in a last-minute DFS lineup.
Or a CD Lamb like I did. That's exactly why I did what I did with CD Lamb right there. You can only afford so much, right? And so I also had Jordan Mason as well, because I feel like he has himself a game today. Brock Bowers, I couldn't agree with you more last night. I felt like he was a guy that we were going to see a lot of stuff out of today as well. So give it to me. Sign me up. I like it.
Here's one, and there's the glory of an 8-team league here is I got one coming through. Flex, Brandon Ayuk or Brian Robinson Jr.?
Ooh, wow. I'll snag that one first, Mikey. I tell you, I like Ayuk, and I think Mike brought it up earlier in the show, just because of the injury scenario in San Francisco. Ayuk is, I mean, he was already probably number one wide receiver, or at worst number two, but now he's clear cut number one. They're going to have to put up some points, although the Rams are depleted a little bit. But I really like Ayuk over, and I'm contradicting myself because I always say the tide kind of goes to the running back, but because Jaden Daniels has done a decent amount on his feet already, I'd say Ayuk is probably the play.
I actually agree right here. I feel like Ayuk is actually the guy. I like Robinson today. I do. I think he'll still get you volume, but that's the thing that you're right. He's missing the end zone. He's not getting in the touchdown. The more the red zone looks, are looking more at Jaden Daniels than they are anybody else in the backfield, including Austin Eckler. I feel like you're going to be more touchdown prone the other way.
Yeah, I think Ayuk snapped. I think it's just a perfect scenario lined up for Ayuk to have his first big game of the year this week with Kittle. And it's not even just Debo, Kittle, and McCaffrey. That's insane. They're going to be without Debo, Kittle, and McCaffrey today, and they're still trotting out one of the better offenses in the league with Purdy, Mason, Ayuk, Jennings. I don't even know who their backup tight end is.
Yeah, you got me on that one too.
That's funny because you don't ever need to. It's Kittle. Like it's always.
If anybody should know that, it's us.
Right.
Who is the? Oh, here we go. Eric Saubert.
Oh, I said that like 5 minutes ago.
You did.
No, I've never heard that name before either. Like, it's crazy because I mean, some of these depth charts, it's just guys you don't really worry about because it's not like the tight end position has been massive out of San Francisco. Everything that has been massive out of it's because Kittle's tough and hard to take down. So a lot of his points come from Yak. It hasn't been because of multiple opportunities or anything like that. So to me, that's why I haven't really been paying attention, is because they don't really utilize the tight end position as much as, say, other teams do. When you have Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, you don't have to, right? Like, that tight end position is going to be probably one of the more last looks. So, again, I stand by my decision not to do that. And we got there's James Lewis. He is actually, last I heard, he was hanging out with Waldo. So if you can find Waldo, James Lewis is the guy standing right next to him in the green hat.
I don't mean to interrupt, Joe, but you brought up Eric Saubert. First time I'm hearing of him. If we're talking value DFS, you can slip in.
That's what I was about to just freaking say.
You can slip in Deontay Johnson. You can slip in Eric Saubert because he's $4,000 on FanDuel. And next thing you know, boom, you got Lamar Jackson, you got Barkley, you got CeeDee Lamb, I think. So
it's something, seeing we're not getting pegged with questions right now. It's something to really, it's funny. It's a funny conversation I have with people. You do fantasy football? Yeah. All right, that's cool. You in leagues or you do DFS? And most people at this point seem to be one or the other. Or I notice like there's still a lot of people who only do leagues and haven't tried DFS. They're intimidated by it. And I can understand being intimidated by trying to figure out these sites and everything. But like that is such a good point. Like you're going to, in being in leagues, and if you're taking them seriously, you're going to come across Eric Saubert on the waiver wire. You're going to see that he went 2 for 26 last week once Kittle got hurt, but you're not going to play him you're not going to pick him up in a league because there's still going to be legit starting tight ends that are on the waiver wire because you only need 10 starting tight ends to fill 10 teams in your typical league. So there's still, Freiermuths or Higbees, or there's legit tight ends you're going to pick up before you're going to play Saubert. But to your point, Saubert on DraftKings might not even cost $3,000, which allows you to do so much more because there's DraftKings tight ends that are going to be 5,000 that are going to put up the same freaking stat line. So it's a fair, apply the knowledge, even though it might not be relevant to a league. And I can see that she agrees with me 100%.
She says, no way, don't start that tight end. Really, I mean, what qualifies as a good tight end this year? 2 catches for 12 yards?
Fair point.
Oh, wow, in a PPR league, he got me 3. which is 3 more points than Travis Kelce got me last week, which is 3 more points than Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews had a better week last week, right? But the week before he didn't, I mean, so you've got all these big name tight ends, and we're just doing rotten at that position, man. It is just rotten. I just can't believe how bad that team has gotten as far as fantasy value goes. It's just like, come on, man, give it to me.
That's another one, like in drafts, when I'm talking to people who maybe have just started, aren't as experienced, they feel like once they have their 2 running backs, their 2 wideouts, their quarterback, and their flex, like, oh, I'm supposed to take a tight end now. And it's like, no, and before, at least you used to say, if it's not Kelce or now it's no, wait, there's not enough differentiation between the number 5 tight end and the number 15 tight end to warrant taking a tight end over a 4th running back or a 4th wideout, which by week 3 you now need because injuries are already plentiful and we haven't even started bye weeks yet.
Well, and let me throw this at you. So Eric Saubert, $4,000 on FanDuel, and Joe's psyched about that. And Travis Kelce is 7,200 on FanDuel. Travis Kelce has had 7 targets, 4 receptions for 39 yards total. So right? I know, it's crazy. So take Saubert and save the 3,200 that you would if you're not going Kelce. And obviously she agrees.
And then you go from freaking Ford to Saquon Barkley at running back.
Yeah,
exactly.
4,000 is as good as it gets on FanDuel. It doesn't get any lower than that. I found that out when I tried to put CeeDee Lamb in my lineup. I'm like, I'll just sacrifice it at the tight end position because, again, if you're not going for one of these elite tight ends, and even if you are, you're not getting any points from this position. Now, it used to be key critical to have that tight end, and that's why you'd want to draft a tight end in the 1st or 2nd round because that was one position that could differentiate your lineup between 2 lineups, right? If you have 2 powerhouse receivers against 2 powerhouse receivers, which happens often. You have 2 powerhouse running backs versus 2 powerhouse running backs. Happens often. Again, with quarterbacks, even in a super flex league, you have matchups, but it's rare that when you have a solid tight end that in the opposite position against the tight end, if you have one of these elite guys that you're in a disadvantage and you're actually at a probably 10 to 15 point advantage. So if you take out kickers and defenses, that's a really, really big margin to win your fantasy football matches with. But it just hasn't been happening this year. The only productive tight end out there has been Brock Bowers. And even then, I mean, I know 9 for 68 or something, or 9 for 96, I think it was. And there was another tight end, I can't remember, who had a similar stat line a couple of weeks ago, 9 catches for 108 yards.
Likely week 1, but then
yeah. But he did have at least
lightning in a bottle because Andrews is
that
there.
one. But yeah, no, it's just, to me, it's crazy that the tight end position has been this abysmal this entire season. And it's not like that's a position that gets better in the winter. That's the running back. The tight end actually gets used a little less. I guess they do see a little bit of an uptick for winter football, but it's not much.
On the flip side of that, I was doing some single game DFS contests last night, and it had me looking at kickers. You talk about being happy with 6 from a tight end. There's multiple kickers, like the Pittsburgh Boswell and the Houston and Minnesota. There are multiple kickers who have netted double-digit points each week so far. And I find that really funny because from a league perspective, I'm finding that more than half of my leagues have terminated the kicker position from the freaking lineup completely. And again, I would always draft it last round, but I kind of like having the kicker in. And there's been some relevant kicking performances 3 weeks through the year so far. 2 weeks.
Well, what did Kaimi Fairbairn have this last week? He had 5 50-yarders. So, yes. I mean, each one of those at 5 points. If you're scoring,
Boswell had a game like that too.
There's some that do it a 0.1 point per yard. So, I mean, that guy gave you some damn points right there, plus the field goal points, So, yeah, no, I'm starting to warm up on the kicker, but it's because of the kickers, and it's not because of and that's actually probably more of an argument for a position that'll set you apart as opposed to the tight end anymore, because you can get a guy. I can get you a guy almost any week that's going to give you 12 to 15 points, but you can draft the guy that's going to get you 25 week in, week out pretty much consistently. And like I said, I mean, that's a 10-point disadvantage right out the gate just off our kickers. So now I'm going to have to make that up somewhere else. If we have another gap at tight end, I'm at a huge deficit before we've even played football that week, before we've even started the game.
Yeah, and it's funny too with kickers. You're starting to figure out like Philadelphia. I will not play Jake Elliott ever because they freaking go for it on 4th down so often, and they go for 2. And you have certain teams that do that, but then you have other teams who seem to play it a little more conservative, and you're seeing the 3, 4, 5, 6 field goal attempts a game every time they're in the red zone. So you're kind of starting to figure out those teams, because there's nothing worse than having a kicker and rooting for a 4th down from the 30, and you get the 4th down from the 30, but then they freaking go for it instead, and it just,
That is frustrating. And that is a great point, actually, to look at for kickers. Because that is like, dude, I'm telling you, like, how much thought do I put into my kicker? I'm like, oh, it's the last round. This guy. That's how much thought goes into me choosing a kicker when I have to choose a kicker. Most leagues I've gotten rid of them in. But again, like, it's been more exciting watching them. And I think that's probably, again, due to the Scott Fishbowl, because you get a 0.1 per yard plus the field goal, right? Like, so the field goal still only 3, but if you get it from that, it's an 8-point field goal, as opposed to a 5-pointer. So, I mean, like, kickers, and you can flex like 3 kickers at a time if you'd like. And so these kickers can really actually start adding up and be, again, put your opponent at a situational advantage, because they're not going to be able to make up those points. I mean, you just can't, especially if you have a good, solid, again, core lineup. That's going to be really tough to bounce up against.
This is so sad that we're so much we have so much more enthusiasm or more excited about kickers than we do tight ends. It's just sad. It's just sad. What the hell has happened to the tight end position, you a-holes? I mean, we're talking about, you put us in a position, Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta and Trey McBride, where we're talking effing kickers. Do something this week, please.
Walking through that door.
Do something this week.
He's not walking through that door.
Yeah, people keep talking about this looming civil war, and they keep saying it's politics. But this is the core issues right here that are going to drive real results right here. Let's get the tight end back in the damn game.
The tight ends, the tight ends, they suck. They suck. They suck this year. They suck. You're like A.J. Dillon, you effing tight ends. You suck.
Except for 2 of you, Brock Bowers and Isaiah Likely week 1. That was it. With that, guys, we got all our questions caught up. We got everything going. Do we have anything else to add before we go ahead and call it a day here, boys?
Tight ends, you suck. That's it.
Tight ends, you suck. Besides tight ends, you suck. Joe, what do you got for us?
It's the first big week of the year for leagues, because you wake up on Tuesday morning, you're either 2-1 or you're 1-2, and there's a huge difference in how you feel about that. So.
And how you proceed with that. So make sure you're following us here at Triple Play Fantasy. Ask us anything all week long on Twitter. Get there, guys. You can follow us at all our handles right there down below. Thank you. Sorry about the special guest again this week, although she seemed to rather enjoy it. She's about ready to
rally.
But thank you guys so much for joining us again, and we will see you again next week on the Blitz.